I hope we are live now. I'm Kirill, the founder of ConferenceCast. That's my co-host Kira McDonald.
Hi everyone. We know there is a bit of a delay, so we'll give everyone a few seconds or minutes to just kind of get going here. Welcome to the very first installment of Survival Tales series, brought to you by ConferenceCast, an on-demand knowledge platform for conference recordings. So thanks so much for joining us today, whether you're joining live or whether you are listening to this talk at some point in the future. We hope you're having a great day. So as I said, we'll just give people a few seconds, minutes to get going here. And as you're dialing in, feel free to say hello in the chat, and then we'll be talking about, spoiler alert, we'll be talking a lot about pivoting today and transitioning. So let us know, 2020, how have you pivoted this year? What has been your angle there? So don't be shy, introduce yourself in the chat, and let us know how have you pivoted this year.
Yeah. Thank you for the intro, and like few words before we bring on our first guest, who is Patrick Kirby today. I'm just introduce what we do as a platform. We are building an on-demand knowledge platform which aggregates best conferences talks all around the world, from all around the world, like YouTube, but for professionals only. And what we help conference organizers, monetize their content, recordings, turn it into a valuable asset, and also build community around media content and boost leads generation. So you can learn more about us on our website. And now is the time to call for Patrick. So,
yes.
Ta-da!
Hi,
Patrick.
Yeah, hi. Hello.
We did it.
Just a few words, just to say that, why Survival Tales? This series, we put together this series to help the industry survivors have this open and raw conversations about, what happened in 2020 and how the transition has been going. And I mean, Patrick, you are really one of the people who, you've made some major, awesome lemonade from the lemons that 2020 has given you, right? So it's a pleasure to have you on as our first speaker today. If you could just take a few minutes and introduce yourself and talk about your company.
Sure. Well, I'm Patrick Kirby. I'm the founder of Do Good Better Consulting. We're a firm that helps nonprofits suck less at fundraising. And one of the things that people found themselves asking in March and April of this year is when on earth are we going to be able to do events again, fundraising events and all that good sorts. And I think there was a lot of confusion. There's a lot of well, what do you do? How do you do this? Is there a system? Is there whatever? And we were there to help right away. We were one of the first groups to do a nonprofit conference out of the gate, fully virtual. We actually bumped ours up from our date in July, actually bumped it up to April because we knew everybody needed a little bit of extra messaging and a little bit of help. And we took the leap, did it completely virtual, and it was a success. Mostly because we didn't know what the heck we were doing, and it turned out that it was the risk was well worth the reward, and we had people who stopped. Normally, we do our conference here in Fargo, North Dakota, and we got about 150, 200 people that show up in person. We had way more than that log on virtually from over 14 different states and 5 different countries across the world. We got to beam in speakers from New Jersey to Seattle to England, viewers in Africa. So it was just a really great opportunity to globally reach rather than just locally reach, and we couldn't have been happier. And so then we actually made a pivot to actually open up a sort of a side business called Do Good Better Events by taking their in-person events and making them into the virtual. So fundraising and how you actually do that and what conversations you have to have with donors and sponsors and what the logistics you need and how to stream it, what technology to use. It's overwhelming to people who have never done it. So we decided to take it upon ourselves to help guide the nonprofit world. That turned into business conferences, business trainings, Chamber of Commerce groups. And we just took all newcomers and said, let's figure out how we can help as many people as possible. And that's kind of our major pivot in 2020 was that.
Right. So what role did face-to-face events play in your business prior to 2020?
Really critical, and for the nonprofit worlds that we helped consult with, extremely valuable. Mostly that's where you would have your galas or your wine events or your golf tournaments. And when everything's thrown in for a loop there, you kind of really don't know what to do. How do you replace that revenue? Because a lot of nonprofits are revenue heavy based on that. So it was very critical that we figured that out as fast as possible. On our end, from our either consulting firm or how we did trainings, was all face-to-face. So whether it's a coffee shop or whether it's a lunch meeting, or whether we were having small groups or medium-sized groups gathered to kind of help train, it was all in person. We had made a leap to offer some of our programming virtually, kind of very in a very not as advanced version that you were doing with ConferenceCast, but it was a very small niche of like, hey, we're going to record our stuff and we'll put it up there for views. So we'd already kind of dabbled our toes in the space, but this just forced our hand to actually do everything we were doing tenfold and kind of trying to experience that on a larger scale. So, but to your point, very important and very critical for every one of the clients that we were serving.
Right. No, sounds great. And it just, because you make it sound so easy, right? You just came in and, you turned your, talk about pivoting, right? So you went from, having a business or an organization that's very much evolved around having those face-to-face events into going, sounds like for now, 100% virtual. So I think it would be really valuable for our audience if you could just talk about some key lessons learned, key challenges. If you could just talk about that transition in a little bit more detail, going from offline to online.
Yeah. The biggest lesson that we learned was your technology piece is super important, but please don't figure it out yourself. Find somebody who knows what the hell they're doing first. So then you can concentrate on building relationships and developing those valuable connections for the person to person, whether it's on phone or email or whatever. Because even in a virtual world, a personal connection and at least an eyeball-to-eyeball meeting, whether it's virtually or not, is so unbelievably critical. There was a moment, and I figure we all remember that time where like, all I want to do is hug somebody or give somebody a high five. But you can't do it because you're in this virtual COVID world. And the minute that happened, we noticed that those who picked up the phone, what was old school is new school again, picked up the phone, left a message, called them and said, hey, I'd love you to be a part of this event. I know it's going to be online, but I'd love you to be a part of it. The connection grew. And we realized that if you're doing a donation or you're having somebody, appeal or whatever, that personal touch, even though you're doing something on a screen, that personal touch was absolutely critical. So while you were letting the technology ride with somebody else who knew what they were doing, you had to actually make sure that you were a better relationship builder, a better fundraiser, a better communicator, better storyteller than ever before. And I'm sure you've noticed this as well as everybody who's viewing this. The world got a lot more crowded online. So it was very hard to float to the top and try to figure out how you would be noticed. And you have hardcore fans, whether you're a business owner or whether you're a nonprofit, you've got people who really love what you do. So how do you get them to tune in? Well, make sure that or they know what you have in mind, and make sure you're communicating what the link is, make sure you are telling them what they're going to expect. Keep things short. What we learned really interesting was some of these events, the average keynote speaker was like 60 minutes. Is that what it is? Like 55 to 60 minutes, right? You listen to somebody do keynotes. That has to get down to 30 minutes because we all now have developed the attention span of gnats. And so it's just these very quick little moments that you have to just compress. And then during the event and the online space is that you had to just compress everything and make everything shorter so that you could command the attention longer by doing different things every once in a while, right? So what you're seeing here in the backgrounds, right? So Kirill's got a really interesting, fun background with the lights. I wonder if he's in a high-rise somewhere, if he's in cool New York. You got to have something as, Mario nerd in the background here to keep people's attention. And then the boxing and the spaces. It doesn't necessarily look like the Brady Bunch Zoom calls that you once had as well. And each one of those things was kind of just learned on the fly based on what you yourself would want to see during a online conference or online presentation. So it became much less important on what you wanted to say and extremely important on how you present what you're saying. And that was like the biggest, like, mind-blowing thing when we were developing some of these programs online, was that you had to reshift how you presented things instead of what you were presenting in the first place.
Mm-hmm. Wow, there's a lot. Yeah, just a lot of
unpack there. I know.
Yeah, and I love what you said about old school becoming new school as well.
Yeah.
I think So human touch, being in touch with the audience. We'll talk about that in a second. But just making sure that people know where you're headed. You want to go ahead, Kirill, with the next question?
Yeah, I'd like to ask you about the technical side of this transition. Mm-hmm. So you said that everything, like many things, like with technical things, you've done like for the first time when you try to figure out how to like survive a new world. Yeah, and we're talking about like survivals. So surviving. Yeah. So what solution do you use to run your events online? Maybe they were kind of discovering like. Maybe you tried some, like not one tool but many, and like what was your track and why you stopped on some solution you use now?
Yeah, there became and you know this well as anybody else, there became a lot of different solutions that people came up with during this sort of pandemic at home, and they were trying to mimic the best and the brightest. It was Microsoft Teams, it was Zoom, it was Google Hangouts, Ustream, and YouTube. Like that was great. But even Facebook made a pivot, right? You're probably watching this on Facebook, or maybe watching a clip on this on Facebook. They actually made a pivot to make sure that you could do events on Facebook, so you didn't leave the actual page itself to get more views and eyeballs on these things, right? So you had to learn a new algorithm, you had to learn techniques. What we finally landed on is a couple ones. One, having a Ustream channel that just went from like a hard feed from where we would develop cameras and that kind of stuff, so you wouldn't have an interruption based on other people's internet. They could always kind of tie back in. That was really important. The other one too that we used mostly than anything is Zoom, just because of the breakout features, because it was easy to use on the back end. Their upgraded webinar thing was very good. They invested, I don't know how much money into that system when this thing went sort of crazy, COVID crazy.
At least like just to keep it working.
During months, right? Yeah, so they had really doubled down on it. Microsoft was slow to catch up with their teams and allowing breakout rooms and that. And now they're really robust, and so you see a lot of people moving to Teams. That's YouTube's true. Always been there, right? YouTube's just been streaming since the day it was there. It was like really great to chat feature. It had some recordability. You could edit within it, which is really great. And then Facebook finally caught up with the rest of the streaming services. So we really kind of use Ustream as our back end for everything. Bringing people in for speakers is really easy on Zoom. The breakout rooms is probably better on Teams. And then just for the reliability of housing everything, YouTube is really great. So depending on, and this is really what you have to do when you're determining whether you're going to do your events live, is who's your audience and what are you trying to accomplish, right? And really, this pivot has been really clarifying for businesses and nonprofits and organizations. Is why on earth are you doing this in the first place is a legitimate question you need to ask yourself, so that you don't do things for the sake of doing things. You're actually doing things purposefully. And as much time as we had by ourselves in quarantine, the less time we have, apparently, which is really weird, isn't it? Like, so we're way busier because we can have multiple meetings, because you don't have to go anywhere across town to go to a coffee or a lunch or a dinner. So now your whole afternoon and mornings are packed with back-to-back meetings. So you don't have time to do a conference, so that you need to be very purposeful with why people would want to log on in the first place. Right? This is very purposeful. It's giving tips and tricks and things that you would want to know on how you pivot. Very purposeful. But if you do a fundraiser with no explanation to it, nobody's going to log on. Nobody's going to stick around, because there's not been a very robust communication with that person who's logging on, which goes back to kind of what you need to do to pivot, is that personal touch, that sort of communication. And so, it's all over the place.
Yeah, got
I'm
it.
just
Thank
going
you.
to jump ahead, Kirill. I'm just going to, as I think it just makes sense to ask the next question now. So we started talking about the audience engagement, right? Which is the buzzword, right? So, obviously audience engagement is critical. It's always been critical, but 2020, pivoting, how has 2020 and this whole online thing changed the way you engage with your audience? And you talked about that a little bit briefly already, right? So personal touch, what's in it for you, right? How do you actually be very clear on the benefits for the audience? Anything else, maybe throughout your events, as you're delivering the events, what do you do to keep those people engaged?
Yeah. You get to be rewarded for creativity nowadays.
Okay.
Way more than you would in person, right? So back in the day, you could back in the day when we did that events, right? Like 9 months ago, back when we had in-person events, you could get a keynote speaker, you could get a motivational speaker, and they'd come on, they'd tell really good stories, and they had really good jokes. All of those stories and jokes were predicated on the audience's reaction.
Right.
Hey, how many people here had an experience, right? You raise your hand. Great, that's awesome. By a round of applause, you do this. Those speakers completely vanished off the face of the earth because they were not able to pivot how to engage an audience and have their message stick, because part of the shtick as one of those speakers was that you would interact with and engage the audience in physical activities and eye connections, etc. So people who were really good communicators and presenters in an in-person event got to the virtual world and they sucked, because they didn't have their crutches that they had relied on to engage audiences. So now you had to do something, one or two things. One, you had to have somebody who is either in the face or in their hands or in their backgrounds to be interesting to look at and to listen to. You have to be quick with a joke, and you have to be quick with witted and easily pivotable and easy to make moves that are not necessarily glacial. You have to be quick with this. That was really rewarded. And then being entertaining and, sort of engaging means you could bring musicians in. So we did our do-gooders conference in the virtual world. We said, how do we get people to break up the monotony of having somebody just drone on about stuff? So we hired local and regional musicians and then put in between all the speakers live performances from those musicians. And so you get 30 minutes of great content and a 10-minute music break, and then 30 minutes of great content and a 5-minute music break. And then you're pinging back further, like, what's going on? And then you were rewarded from doing things unexpected. You expect to get a dried crescent roll and some cold coffee at a conference in a ballroom at a hotel. You don't expect to have something like lunch delivered to you from like Food Dudes at a conference that you signed up for to watch online. You don't expect a box.
For the first time, actually.
Yeah.
The second time will be a little bit expected.
Yes, but the first time you didn't. So now what? So now what do you do? So now you're challenged with raising the bar all the time. And I think getting complacent and doing the same thing over and over again is going to be the death knell or the downfall of a lot of organizations who think they found that magic sauce, but everybody else is then doing the box of food. So now what else are you doing? Are you providing, for example, we just launched a partnership with one of the distilleries here in town that we're doing virtual cocktail making. So we will then deliver a box of little mini booze bottles from their distillery, all the fixings, all the stuff, recipe cards, and then you log on part of your virtual happy hour to learn from a bartender on the history of the booze, how they make it, how to make that drink. Here's the cocktail. So your next cocktail party, you can actually make that drink. It's interactive. Now you're pushing the boundary again. So that creativity is absolutely key. That ability to be fresh and engaging and entertaining. The chat feature is extremely important, especially for like accessibility issues. So let's just say you're an individual or your group with developmental disabilities, or you've got somebody with a disability. What are you doing to provide access to everyone, right? So getting out your materials in advance, doing a recap, maybe transcribing, absolutely. Are you helping with the technology? Are you using words that are not complex? basic things that we should be doing anyway, but now you have to be conscious of it because you want everybody to log on and be inclusive. That's another pivot that you have to make in this virtual world to be accessible to everybody. And that thought process never stops. It's like that wheel that keeps on turning, and every other new idea you have to try and test. It's like a beta testing with mailing and advertising, what works and what doesn't. And you always have to be reinventing yourself in the virtual space, because if you don't, you will be behind somebody that is already making that pivot. And then you're going to play catch up, which means you're not floating to the top of the uniqueness, and you're not floating to the top of everybody else. You're not top of mind. And then you've got to scramble. It's way harder to scramble to the top rather than kind of maintain and continue your creativity. So
it's interesting, actually. Every event, like looks like every event is discovering their own way to involve people. I mean, like using different methods. Like the followers are combining those methods all together and like inventing something new. But again, my question about engagement, first of all, concerning speakers. So except chat, are any other ways to understand the audience engagement during a talk?
Yeah.
Could you share maybe some approaches or like your thoughts on it?
Yeah, in your Zoom webinar feature on the back end, here's a little thing for you. You can actually ping or pin individuals within that who are attending, and you can actually queue them up to ask a question live rather than just in chat too. So they can actually, if you're doing a Q&A with the speaker, or you're doing a Q&A portion of it, pin somebody, bring them up live, and all of a sudden, like in this little box here, they come up and they get to actually ask the question in advance. Now, there's a little bit of danger with that, because you don't know if they have great sound or great camera, and you've got to make sure that they do that. So again,
great question.
yeah, exactly. So a lot of those questions in advance, if you want to ask a question, make sure that you've got all these things. But do they know that they have a camera or a thing? So being upfront in that communication before that event happens, in order for them to experience it in a way that you meant that conference to happen, is that pre-communication piece. Additionally, getting them something in hand physically while they're watching something virtually is really important, because you can read along, you can check off things, you can also journal or take notes within a branded thing that you send attendees in advance, which means they're actually writing notes on a thing that you're talking about that's branded, and they're seeing, and it's reinforcing everything that they're talking about, which takes a little bit of foresight and a little bit of action before the event starts, so that you have to be purposeful with what you're doing in the first place. So there's a lot of ways that you can do interaction pieces. Breakout rooms are a great one. You can have a facilitated breakout room. If you have a facilitated breakout room, make sure you've got pre-solicited questions, and having somebody manage those breakout rooms. That's super, super key, because you don't want to end up in a breakout room and then nobody talks and everybody's a bunch of introverts, and you just stand there like, is anybody going to talk? Like, it's really awkward. So making sure you've got a host, I think, is super important. And then even having an MC of a virtual event is so critical to drive what people should be paying attention to let them know about what's going on. Never assume that the audience is smart enough to carry on without you. So make sure that you're guiding them through the process, and you're helping them get an experience that they're going to love, so they come back and either buy your products, or they come back and support your organization, or however that is. You want to make sure that they have the best experience ever, and that is being very upfront and very over communicative and very fun and engaging and purposeful and creative, so that they tell their other friends about how awesome you were.
Good. I love your answers. Thank you so much. So actually, speaking about accessibility, so like recording live events used to be a project of its own. So like we think that's one of the best things about online events these days is that they are automatically recorded with virtually no extra effort needed. So what possibilities does it give to you, if any, and what do you do with your event recordings?
Right. It gives you such a better advantage post-event than at any other time during your event career, honestly. because you can cut up these clips into mini social viral posts and then comment on why that post was engaging in the first place. So let's just say you and I have a conversation here. We talk about events and you found that, hey, being engaging and finding creative ways is a cool thing. You take that 30-second clip of you and I talking about that, post that clip on your social media, and then write about why that post was great, right? So you embed it into Facebook, so it means you keep them on, right? So it's not as good as live, but it's close enough. It's a part of the algorithm loves it. You're not taking them to someplace other than Facebook, so you embed that into Facebook. The algorithm rewards you because of it. You develop a piece of content by writing about what they're about to listen to, which seems counterintuitive because they want to listen to it. However, people want to read and then experience. And then from that can become a blog post. From that can become a tweet. From that can be a screenshot that you put on Instagram. Part of that can be part of a larger at a clip glance before they click onto the larger project itself as a sales piece. It can sell next year's event. It can excel your ability to sell yourself as a speaker or a motivational presenter. All of those things can be done with a 30-second clip that you take from a live event that you get to then curate an entire boatload of content for you and your business or your organization. It's perfect. And so you never really thought about that at a live event because everybody you wanted is right in the room, right? But now you have an audience that may not have gotten to it because, again, we're all busy and we don't know how to log on at the same time. And there might be 58 people that might want to go, but only maybe 10 or 11 can go at the same time that you're going to go live. That means your audience is expanding and you can touch more people. And that will then be, hey, I want you to share this, or I want you to comment on this. And all of a sudden other eyeballs are on it. And you're leveraging great content forever. And that's kind of awesome.
Yeah, but this new opportunities also requires new skills. I mean, before, as far as I know, before event organizers who have recorded their events offline. I mean, that was before COVID.
Yeah.
I think maybe few percent of them really watched it. I mean, it just laid somewhere as a dead weight, and that's all. They the maximum they could do, upload it to YouTube and forget about it, and try to use it prior their next event. Oh yeah, we have some recordings on YouTube. So what we should do? So okay, let's try to promote some. Oh, that was a good speaker. So let's promote him in our social networks. Okay, but what you described requires a completely new skill that is first of all to rewatch everything you created.
Yes.
Second, to determine what parts are best for sharing, and then do this editing. So it's copywriting. So it's social marketing, and from my perspective, 99% of event organizers don't have this skill, even now. So yep. It's a very complicated track to pass to get know how to do these things, because it's the easiest way to hire somebody who know how to do it. But there are not. I assume there are not so many specialists on the market that could do it. And second thing, usually event organizers are very short in budget, so and they have to manage it to learn it themselves, how to do it themselves.
Yeah.
How it was for you? How it was for you?
Yeah, it was all the above. So we learned very quickly that we had to get rid of that as a duty on my end, because I was unable to go and sell different products and services to other people because I was bogged down with doing exactly what you just said, trying to figure it out. And there are experts around, and I would justify it like this. Count the amount of time it takes you to take an hour-long conference or an hour-long conversation and go through it, find the clips, mark the clips, edit the clips, add bottom thirds, add lower thirds, add a title screen, put it into the system, figure out where you're going to market it, how are you going to launch it, what the content you're going to write, all of that. Think about how much time that's going to take, then multiply it by what you make per hour or whatever, and you will find it's exponentially cheaper to hire out that particular process, because that's going to help you grow your business. It's going to grow your organization, et cetera. Now, what this does, though, is it forces you to be purposeful about what you want to take out of some of those things, right? So some of it might be unnecessary because it doesn't fit your long-term goals. So it forces you to think a little more analytically about what your next step's going to be and what you're going to use it for. If I was to use this clip itself, on what we want to do, I'd take the clip of like what we pivoted and why we pivoted and the success that we had, because that's going to benefit me in the long term from a business standpoint to say, well, if this guy knows what he's talking about, I better call him to get us to have a conversation on how we can consult with him on how to make our events awesome. So instead of taking the fun clips that you and I are bantering about that may be fun to me and you personally, but from the business standpoint doesn't have an effect. So it's going to require you to think, again, like you said, completely differently, but it's going to set you up for success because you're going to think critically and purposefully about what you're going to do from your business standpoint. And I think that's really a key thing to do.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. But again, like, it's a tough shift for the industry itself. I mean, like, to understand what to do next. I mean, like, and how to deal with it.
Yeah.
And like, speaking about revenue, so like, could you please, would you be comfortable sharing how your revenue mix has changed post-COVID? So has the shift to online opened a new revenue stream? So maybe have you some revenue streams become non-existent post-COVID?
Yeah, some of the sort of group or one-on-one clients and stuff had to put a pause because they had to put a tourniquet on the bleeding from a financial standpoint. So that's what we did to recover on the event side. So we did our event side and our event sponsorships, and that kind of stuff was supplemental to take any losses that we had on our one-on-one clients, which then eventually shifted back. We never lost any events, and we added some of the one-on-ones. And that ability to get in front of people made, our podcast explode, made our speaking opportunities explode, which means the revenue streams came back in full force. So that you have, sort of speaking gig arm of the business. You had a training arm of the business on how to do events, which is we never thought that would be a revenue stream. That is now. The event production stream, the event curation stream, the building scripts and building a run of shows, and then working with others to do videography and editing and all facilitating that became an arm of the business, while still maintaining the hardcore, we're here to help nonprofits raise more money. But there were opportunities abound to add revenue as everybody stopped and paused. And then when everything kind of started rolling a little bit again, we maintained all of it and then added additional pieces as well. So we saw, because we pivoted so early and so quickly, and because we were boutique-y enough to make that move, and I know a lot of organizations are not that small and can't move that quick, but because we saw, we stayed steady Eddie through the toughest of times, and then saw a growth pattern enough to hire individuals, enough to partner with individuals, enough to sort of bring some additional folks on to help. And that was, I think, really beneficial. If we didn't do that, we would have floundered and been unable to provide any of these services because we were overwhelmed with the amount of potential work. And we had to make that move too. And that investment paid off big time. So yeah, there was a lot of different legs that came of it from the thing. So.
Okay, and I think the last question for the interview, because actually we're a little bit close to our timing. So let's try to make some predictions for 2021. So are you considering restarting some events offline when, if that become possible? And how will your online events change?
Super great question. I am a unbelievable optimist. So I am a glass almost overflowingly full human being. I believe that we are going to be able to do in-person events towards the end of 2021. In fact, I think probably towards the end of the summer, we'll be able to do hybrid versions of those. So small gatherings of smaller, large events with a hybrid virtual thing added on. I don't think the virtual event will ever go away because you reach too many people and your audience gets too big. And if you have a physical place at a location, whether it's bigger, whether you're in flyover country here or whether you're on the East or West Coast, there's a finite amount of people that can fit in that space. The internet is infinite. Therefore, you can get as many people as you want across the world. And I think people want to see that valued event they want to experience it in person. But if they can't, it's a lot cheaper to log on than buy a plane ticket and buy a ticket and stay in a hotel and buy your food. You can log on right now and experience something great. So as much as I say that the in-person event will be back, it'll be slowly kind of gaining steam over the summer as we get some of the vaccinations going, as we get outdoors, it's not so cold. I think it'll be less and less. We're going to be a little tough here going forward, but I think it'll go less and less. So you'll be having this hybrid version towards the end of the year. And then into 2022, I think we'll be back to full-time in-person events. But you're still going to have an option to stream because it is so invaluable to connect with as many people as you've already connected with worldwide during the pandemic. So my prediction is going to be slow. It's going to be together, but I think it's always going to be streaming going forward.
And with this coming of hybrid format of events, I think it will be another kind of a challenge for the industry to learn how to create hybrid events instead of all.
Yep. How do you do it?
Not easier than like in comparison with coming from offline to online, because when you combine things, it's a little bit harder to just having it in one place. Like, doesn't matter, is it offline, if it's offline or online.
Mm-hmm. Here's what you're going to have to pay attention to, and every event planner and every person who's doing events is going to have to think about this. Why on earth would someone want to log on to a live event? So what are you doing to make that live event for the virtual attendee entertaining and engaging the same way that you are putting all of your eggs in the basket for the in-person event because you're so freaking excited to get to meet and see people again, right?
Yeah.
You cannot ignore the ones who are in the stream because they're the ones that are going to tell everybody else about it or share it or like it or comment. So you cannot let your over-enthusiastic self about in-person events in that hybrid model take away from your conscious effort to make it as engaging as possible for those who are logging on. Our upcoming event that we are going to do, our do-gooders conference, ConferenceCast was nice enough to host our 2020 do-gooders conference, which we did virtually, and you're one of the only other person outside of me that hosts this event on the internet is you guys. So that's great, and I appreciate it. And so that's awesome. We're going to plan our 2021 event in person, hybrid. And we have a lot of tricks up our sleeves on how we are going to engage the virtual audience outside of how the in-person audience will be engaged live. And we're going to be very purposeful how it is. I'm excited to how that's going to turn out. But like you said, you have to figure that out. Otherwise, it won't work.
Mm.
That's true. Yeah. I think the most challenging thing will be to organize this engagement in terms audience engagement in terms of networking, because actually you can organize for example online watching some like a presentation. Mm-hmm. So you can ask a moderator to pick also questions from people who are who attend remotely. It's easy peasy. But what about connecting people? I think it will be most challenging thing for not only for event organizers, also for platforms, because you can set up a meeting using as the software. It was available before COVID also, those applications, all the stuff. But the next step was always in-person communication, and some for audience that will decide to attend remotely. It could be the challenging thing. Maybe some of event organizers decided to make some special quiet rooms where people could communicate somebody who is in person with somebody who is online via the application, using this face-to-face kind of a video chat.
Yep.
Maybe, but but it's challenging a little bit. And I see many hypotheses will be tested, and not all of them will succeed. Yeah.
But I think the ones who are going to be rewarded are the ones who are going to try as possible and learn as quickly as just.
So it looks like my internet is lagging. Yeah. So I think we ask all questions we have. And it's time to wrap up.
Yeah, well, I think this has been such an incredible, rich conversation with a ton of inspiration, but also a ton of really practical advice. So I hope people have been taking notes. And the great news is that 2021 is going to offer a ton of opportunity for experimenting and pivoting. And these are all those things that we've learned to love, right? So this is great news. I guess if there's anything you guys would like to share in closing, the time is now. Any advice, parting thoughts for the audience? Patrick, Kirill?
Let's Patrick start.
If you make a move and then do it, take some risks, try a bunch of different things, try to experiment as best as possible, make as many moves, but do not lose your sense of purpose and authenticity, and make sure that you are as engaging as possible, and think about what the audience is wanting rather than what you want to tell them. If you can figure that out, I think you're going to be great, regardless of whatever industry or whatever you're thinking about. That's going to be key.
Yeah, my advice will be, to keep the balance between, routine. I mean, like things that you have to do to run your business, and some experiments you can allow yourself. I mean, let more experiments happen, because what we see now, many event organizers try to transfer the offline experience into online without changing the thing. I mean, itself. I mean, so they just digitalize it and that's all. And they thought that they think that it will help, but no, it will not help. So experiments here is a key to success from my perspective. Of course, most of them will show that you will not reach what you want, but some of them will show. It's growth hacking kind of. You don't know what thing will be the best. So will allow you to rise your audience engagement or your revenues, extend your revenue streams. But some of them definitely will, and you don't know what. So you have to test all of them.
Yep,
constantly testing.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much again for this encouragement. Thank you so much, Patrick Kirby of Do Good Better Consulting.
Thank you.
We will be back next week, guys. So Wednesday, December 16th, we are hosting the next installment of the Survival Tales series. Please subscribe to this channel. Check out the box. Subscribe.
Press the bell. Yeah.
Press the notification bell, and there's all kinds of useful links in the description box below, including the link to the calendar, right? Which you can click on that and be up to speed with everything else that's going to be planned as a part of this series. Thank you so much, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, Patrick.
Thanks, gang.
It was a nice 42 minutes.
Yes.
Have a good day.
Yeah.